Information discussed in this podcast may be sensitive in nature to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Leo Wagner, like many Blackfeet tribe members, was a family man. He was also the father of 5 children by age 26, so I'm sure having a lot of his own family around was helpful to him in raising his kids. Leo was well loved by everyone. He was known to be a jokester. He loved to make people laugh, but he was also known to keep some questionable company. In April of 2021, Leo was living on the Blackfeet Reservation just outside of Browning, Montana. This part of the country is beautiful, but it is also very vast. The morning of April 27th, 2021 began as usual. Leo informed his family that he was going to head up to St. Mary Lake, where his father was working on a cabin. When Leo left home that morning, he nor his family had any idea what was in store for them later on. Leo rode up to the area near St. Mary Lake with his friends Drew and Crystal. When they were close enough to the cabins, Leo got out of the car and walked towards the area where his father was believed to have been working. Unfortunately, it was a cold day, and Leo was only wearing a shirt, jeans, and cowboy boots. A short time later, a witness in the area saw a man walking in and out of the lake, or so it seemed, and he appeared to be crying and bleeding. It was Leo. The witness tried to help and then decided to call authorities. He also alerted Drew and Crystal, who were sitting nearby, presumably waiting for Leo. But when this witness told them that he'd already called the police, they left in a hurry. The police, however, weren't interested in investigating. After the witness made a second call to 911, an ambulance showed up, finally. There were no signs of Leo. He had last been seen walking down the road, but from there, he vanished. There would be additional clues that would surface, putting Leo in various places around St. Mary Lake. But Leo himself was never found. Where is Leo James Wagner? Hello, and welcome back to the Where Are They podcast and another unsolved missing person story. Leo's story came recommended to me from Elizabeth in Montana, and it's quite a sad story. The lack of response and interest is extremely frustrating. In fact, I almost felt there wasn't enough information gathered to even share his story with you. But with some digging and persistence, I think there's enough to at least paint somewhat of a picture of Leo Wagner for you. And honestly, his story needs to be told, not just for Leo and his family, but for all of the indigenous people who go missing and don't receive much help due to jurisdictional issues. Now, without further ado, let's just jump right in. Leo James Wagner was born on January 31st, 1995. He was born and raised near Browning, Montana as a member of the Blackfeet tribe. He grew up in a close-knit family, which is pretty typical on the reservation. Leo was described as a jokester, someone who enjoyed making people laugh, enjoyed being silly. He listened to Bone Thugs and Harmony, and he was a fan of classic cars and hot rods. By 2021, a 26-year-old Leo Wagner was a father of 5. He worked on his family ranch, which was located just outside of Browning, although his true passion was boxing. He was a huge fan of Muhammad Ali, and he himself enjoyed getting into the ring and competing as a boxer. The Disappearance. The morning of April 27th, 2021, Leo woke up and told his family that he was going to head out and see his father. His dad was working that day on a cabin up at St. Mary Lake. Leo's two friends, Drew and Crystal, picked him up and drove up to the lake with Leo. As they neared the part of the lake by the cabins, Leo got out of the car and started walking. Drew and Crystal stayed behind, allegedly drinking and waiting for Leo, or so you would think. But this is where things get weird. A short time later, an elder of the reservation saw a young man in distress. This man was near the water, near the lake, and he was crying. He looked to be walking in and out of the water, and the man thought he had seen blood on him, even from a distance. He hollered out to this young man to see if he could help, but the young man didn't respond. The elder wasn't in any shape to get down to the area where this young man was, so he instead called the police. It was clear to him that this person was in need of help. He told the police what he saw, and the response was something to the effect of, "There isn't anything we can do right now, it's shift change." It's almost unbelievable to say that out loud, that a law enforcement agency would actually respond to someone's call for help in that manner, but several reports state that that is what was said during that call. After, the elder man saw a car with two people sitting in it, and he believed that this was the car the young man had gotten out of. He approached them and told them that their friend seemed to be in need of help. They didn't really have a reaction at first, and the elder man told them that he had already called police for help already. At the mention of the police, the couple, Drew and Crystal, sped off. As the witness describes it, like a bat out of hell. Now, many think this will indicate some type of guilt, but maybe they were doing something illegal and didn't want to get caught. Or perhaps they had done something to Leo. In any event, they were more concerned about getting out of there before authorities arrived than they were for their possibly injured friend. As time passed, almost a half an hour by now, and no police officers showed up, the elder called again, this time requesting an ambulance. He had seen Leo walking west on West Shore Road, and he definitely was injured. The ambulance did show up, thankfully, but they couldn't find Leo. They looked for a while before eventually giving up and leaving the area. A police officer, an officer with the Blackfeet Law Enforcement Tribal Police, did show up later that evening. He allegedly walked around a little bit, didn't see anything unusual, and he left. Meanwhile, that night at the Wagner home, everyone was left wondering where Leo was. He hadn't returned home when they expected him to, and his father had said he never showed up at the cabin where he had been working. This really wasn't like Leo at all, and the concern began to grow. The next day, April 28th, 2021, the family made the decision to report Leo as missing. Leo James Wagner had disappeared. The search and investigation. The search from authorities and law enforcement, anyhow, didn't exactly take off. In fact, it didn't really happen at all, at least in those early days. But the family was not going to sit around and wait. Leo's father, siblings, and close friends went off in search of Leo. Their first stop was the area of St. Mary Lake in the cabins, since that is where he had said he was going. And pretty soon, they found their first clue. They spoke to the elder who had reported to the police that a young man needed an ambulance. He told the family the story of what he saw and the lack of response from law enforcement, which of course enraged the family. Leo was out there, likely in need of help, and the urgency to find him was mounting. Where was Leo? Where had he gone? How had he become so severely injured? To the point of bleeding and crying. As far as we know, his two friends, Drew and Crystal, have always stated that they have no idea what happened to Leo that day. So Leo's family continues to search with no luck. This was completely baffling. If he was injured, as the man had seen, he couldn't have gone too far, right? And local hospitals had no record of Leo coming in. The first real break in the case would come in to law enforcement on May 2nd, 5 days after Leo vanished. Someone in the area reported that their cabin had been broken into. Police responded to the call, labeling it as a B&E, breaking and entering. They found some items in the cabin, along with a lot of blood. They also discovered blood on a stump outside of the cabin. Leo's family would identify the items that were found as belonging to Leo. Law enforcement didn't seem to do too much at the scene, but they did indicate the blood was significant, and many feared that they were no longer on a search and rescue mission, but rather a recovery mission. This did seem to finally light a fire under the Blackfeet Tribal Police, known as BLES, or the Blackfeet Law Enforcement Services. After this breaking and entering report came in, the hunt for Leo was on full force. Authorities brought out search dogs, cadaver dogs, helicopters. They searched on horseback and ATVs, and they took out boats and divers onto St. Mary Lake. No sign of Leo was found. This intense part of the search lasted from May 2nd to May 9th, when law enforcement decided it was time to scale it back. They had done everything they had known to do. Without any additional clues or leads coming in, they were at a standstill. They claimed, as they still claim today, that the search is ongoing, but the family has said they rarely, if ever, receive updates on Leo's case. On May 8th, some audio recordings were posted on social media regarding Leo's disappearance. Of course, this caused an uproar in the community with friends of Leo, with his family, and it certainly got the rumor mill going, but law enforcement said they investigated these recordings and they were deemed to be false. From here, it would take over a year for the Blackfeet Law Enforcement Services to ask for help from the BIA, the Bureau of Indian Affairs. This would open them up to help from professionals, particularly those experienced in searching for missing indigenous people. The BIA is a federal U.S. agency. Also would bring in access to federal resources. But was it too little too late? Leo Wagner seemed to walk off into the Montana wilderness, injured and under severe duress. We don't know why, and we don't know where he went from there. Focus was spent on the wooded areas surrounding the lake and cabin, of course, and special attention has been on the lake itself, many wondering if he possibly ended up in the water. Years later, however, we still have no idea. Leo's case has gained a little bit of publicity here and there and is often talked about alongside Arden Pepion, a 3-year-old girl who vanished near the Two Medicine River area, also just outside of Browning, Montana, just 5 days before Leo did. Now, their cases are not thought to be connected. Arden was just a 3-year-old girl, but together they have helped shine a light on missing person cases within the Blackfeet Reservation and with the indigenous people population altogether. Browning, Montana. Browning, Montana is considered a very small town in the northwestern part of Montana. The town has a population of just around 1,000 residents and is the headquarters for the Blackfeet Nation of Montana. Browning is also considered to be the gateway to Glacier National Park. Suffice to say, this is an area of vast wilderness with many mountains, creeks, rivers, and lakes, and severe weather. Browning, Montana does have an Amtrak station, and Browning itself is very close to the Canadian border. Leo was last known to be just outside of Browning in the area of St. Mary Lake. There are several cabins in this area, which of course is the reason Leo was said to have gone there to begin with, but it's pretty sparse. There's not much there. St. Mary Lake is the second largest lake in Glacier National Park, known for its scenic beauty, and the pictures show a beautiful lake. It is 10 miles long and 300 feet deep, with a surface area of almost 4,000 acres. There is also a lot of wildlife in that area, including black bears and grizzly bears, and there are some popular tourist spots around the lake. Boating, fishing, and hiking are the most popular attractions. However, in the off-season, when the weather is cold and the days are short, the area is pretty desolate. Part of the concern with Leo being out there was he wasn't prepared for any weather conditions. It was April and it was still cold. In fact, the day he vanished was particularly cold, and Leo didn't take with him a coat or a jacket or any warm clothing at all. The conditions would have been harsh for anyone, let alone someone who may have been injured, as we suspect Leo was. Blackfeet Reservation and the Missing Indigenous People Crisis. The Blackfeet Indian Reservation in Montana is one of the largest and most culturally rich Native American reservations within the U.S. It is home to the Blackfeet Nation, with about 7,000 enrolled Blackfeet tribal members living there right on the reservation. However, that means most of the area is totally uninhabited, seeing as the Blackfeet Reservation covers over 1.5 million acres. The tribe is governed by a tribal business council elected by Blackfeet members. The tribe has its own laws, courts, and law enforcement. And here is what leads us to one of two major problems and why many people believe the indigenous population has such a higher percentage of missing persons, despite such a lower percentage of the overall population. In fact, the statistics are pretty alarming. In Montana, the indigenous person population accounts for 6.7% of the total state. Yet, 27% of missing persons in Montana are indigenous. First, the tribal reservations have their own law enforcement. And at the recording of this, they have 18 officers at the Blackfeet Reservation in charge of 1.5 million acres. So yes, while the population is just around 7,000 on the reservation itself, they are spread across a huge, vast area. Is 18 enough to cover that ground? And do they have the resources to help find missing persons? For a while, their records were not shared with the FBI or other government agencies in the United States. And because of this, there are likely even more missing persons that are unknown. In fact, some say that the record keeping in the past was so poor that many missing persons were never even put into any system. Thankfully, there have been efforts to improve this, and many organizations have stepped up to help. So while yes, I'm kind of painting a bleak picture, I do want to highlight and mention that a lot of improvements have been made, specifically to help in the crisis of missing and murdered indigenous persons. Savannah's Act is a U.S. law focused on improving the federal government's response to missing or murdered American Indians and Alaska Natives. It was signed into law on October 10, 2020. The act is named after Savannah LaFontaine Greywind. She was a Spirit Lake Nation member who was murdered in 2017 while pregnant. The Department of Justice in the United States, the DOJ, has also continued to establish MMIP offices and task forces to assist in the MMIP crisis. The Amber Alert in Indian Country was established in 2018 to help with the missing children on the reservations. This law was created after the tragic abduction and murder of 11-year-old Ashlyn Mike. Not all of these, of course, are relevant to Leo Wagner's disappearance, but I just want to point out that in recent years, the federal government and tribal authorities have made some progress, have made improvements to work together, to assist each other, and do what they can in light of this crisis. So what do you think happened to Leo Wagner? Did he wander off injured and succumb to his injuries? How did he sustain such terrible injuries? Do his two friends know more than they are saying? It definitely seems as though there is more to this story for sure, but regardless, Leo is still missing. Leo is described as a Native American male standing 5 foot 8 inches tall and weighing around 165 pounds when he was last seen in April of 2021. He has dark hair and brown eyes. He was known to be wearing a blue plaid or striped short sleeve button down Western style shirt, a white undershirt, and blue jeans. Anyone with any information on Leo Wagner is asked to contact the Blackfeet Tribal Law Enforcement Agency at 406-338-4000. Thank you for listening to Leo's story today. His family is out there continuing to search for Leo, push for answers, even though it is believed that he is likely deceased. They would still like to know what happened to their son, to their brother, to their father. And if something nefarious did happen to Leo out there, Leo needs and deserves justice as well. Leo leaves behind 5 children and a loving family. Let's keep sharing Leo's story and helping to bring awareness to his case. If you've made it this far and would like to help our podcast reach more people, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. This truly helps these stories get out there and get shared more. If you have a case suggestion for me, you can reach out on the socials. All of those links can be found in the show notes, or you can email me anytime at canwefindthem@gmail.com. You can also support our show over at Patreon, and those funds help us pay it forward. Our next charity will be in honor of Leo and the MMIP crisis. If you'd like to suggest a charity for me, send that my way, and we will let you know who we choose. Thank you again so much for listening to Leo's story today. Keep sharing, keep pushing. Someone out there very likely has the missing puzzle piece to solve this case. We will be back again very soon with another unsolved missing persons story. And until then, stay safe and hug your loved ones.